Hi guys, happy Wednesday. Coming out to you from my lovely office here and in a really cool Boston Terrier sweater that Collier gave me. Love it. Perfect for the holidays. So last week, Sam kicked off our Behaving Boldly series, which is basically designed to give women practical tips on how to live more confidently, more boldly in their lives, starting now and in the year to come. Sam talked to us about finding confidence and living boldly within our bodies and sort of bucking what the patriarchy has impressed upon women about what we should think and feel about our bodies. So today I sort of want to continue on the same vein and talk to you about behaving boldly within the constructs of family. Family is kind of an interesting topic. So normally, especially around the holidays, when we think about family, we think about roses and rainbow colored glasses and everybody gathered around the fire and the Christmas tree and people who empower you and support you and love you unconditionally. And that's true for many people. But for many people, it can be the exact opposite, or maybe it's just a more complicated version of that. And for me, that's definitely the case. My family is a much more complicated thing for me to navigate, and honestly can be very hard to talk about. But I sort of want to challenge the idea, especially that's been presented in the media, this idealized, romanticized version of family, that blood is thicker than water and that you have to do everything in your power to please your family and stay within that construct. What I want to talk about today is how I learned to redefine family and what that means for me, and also to how to empower myself outside of the construct of family that I clung to so deeply for the first 25 years of my life. So a little bit of background on me. I grew up in a pretty strict family. I had my childhood was fantastic. It was great. It was fine. But my parents are both type A perfectionists, much like myself. And they were very strict. We grew up in a religious household. The last church that I went to was a Southern Baptist church. It was very traditional. We had Fox News on at all times, and just as sort of like a gauge of the sort of spectrum that we were operating in growing up, I was gifted every Ann Coulter book for Christmas. So that's where we're starting. College was not a enormously mind-opening time for me. Well, in some ways it was. I started to sort of examine and question my feelings on religion and what I thought was right and wrong. So that was sort of where I started looking at what I believed and what I believed to be right, what I believed to be wrong, what I believed how people were actually living their lives versus how they were saying they're living their lives. Law school was a totally mind-changing time for me. It was a really important developmental period of my life. A lot of changes happened for me. I started reading and looking at new ways that we examine the Constitution. I was exposed to ways of thinking that I was not exposed to in college. And just sort of as like a disclaimer, I was a finance and accounting major, so I don't really know how much life-changing, mind-changing stuff was going to happen in an accounting class, but nonetheless, it really took me going to law school to come out of my shell of thinking that I had always known. So anyways, the summer that really changed my life dramatically was the summer of my 2L year, and it was the summer that I worked at a legal aid clinic in downtown Charleston. And this was a life-changing experience for me because I had proximity to a group of people that I had never had proximity to. And I use the word proximity because I just went to a speech where Bryan Stevenson, who is a civil rights attorney and campaigns against the death penalty, something that he has talked about is that people who are, especially people of privilege, need to put themselves in proximity to communities who are oppressed. And so this was really the first time that I had really come into proximity with a community who was impoverished economically and oppressed as far as human rights go. And my life changed. And I sort of started to question all of the things that I had been taught, that unfettered capitalism was the answer, that, you know, limited government was the answer, or no government, or whatever. I started to understand that the systems that we had built in the United States had been built to oppress and keep down another group of people. And I began to vocalize my observations and findings with my family. And just sort of in a way initially to bounce the ideas off of them because they were so different from what I had known growing up. And I was sort of shocked at what I was seeing every day, but I was seeing it every single day. And so it wasn't something that I could just look away from and pretend it wasn't happening. It was every single day. So while I started to vocalize my observations, what resulted was not only just explosions of misunderstanding, but a distancing of themselves from me. And this video is not meant to be a like bash your family video, but it is part of my story, and I think it's important because I know that a lot of people have experienced this. So they began to distance themselves from me and more or less disown me. I don't have a relationship with my immediate family anymore, based on a lot of my changing political ideals. And I hate using the word political because I feel like it's not political. These are human rights to me is now how I see it. And so I hate to use that term, but that's really, I think, in their minds what happened. And to say I was devastated is an understatement. I mean, I had to totally change my life after this happened. And this was in the middle of my 3L year. I was devastated. I was horrified. It took lots of therapy to get through it, but we're on the other end. It's fine. But I will tell you, not one time during that really challenging period did I ever feel alone. And I think that's sort of what the crux of this is. It's not that, oh, you know, I don't have a relationship with my family. It's that when I think I could have felt really alone, I did not feel alone. And that was because I had built a community of women around me who supported me unconditionally. So what I had done unintentionally really was to create this network of support who was not necessarily my family. And I'm going to go ahead and make a caveat that I do have a lot of my family that is really amazingly supportive and I love unconditionally, and I'm so thankful for them. But that doesn't change the fact that this was a very challenging time in my life. And I was also having all these different thoughts about what I thought and believed to be true. So lots of changes. But what I really sort of learned to challenge was this concept that has been taught to all of us, is that blood is thicker than water and that you have to be loyal to your family no matter what. And it's not that I disagree with that, because family is really important. It's that I sort of learned to reorganize what I think of as family. And I learned that you can choose your family and that family has to support you too. They don't get to disown you because of what you believe, or they shouldn't. They can. But what you can do in your life is that you can choose who is your family. My family is, of course, my aunts, uncles, grandmothers, and I love them. But my family is also my friends here. It's also my husband. It's also his family. And it's the people that I've chosen to be around me who are my family now. And the other thing, so not only can you behave boldly in that you can select your family and you can choose who your family is, but you can talk to your family about what you think is right and wrong and what's important in your life. And if they love you unconditionally, this isn't going to be a problem. Now, with all of that being said, this is not for everybody. I can tell you that this is one of the hardest periods in my life, and it's still really hard for me to think about. So it's not for everyone. You have to know what's right for you and what's best for you, your mental psyche and your physical psyche and whatever. So you got to know what's right for you. But I've heard a lot of talk, especially after this election, that, when you go home for Thanksgiving, like, don't talk to your family about anything that's going to upset them, la-di-da. It sort of feels a lot like, white privilege and the fragility of white people, and that frustrates me. So I encourage people to talk to their families, because who else is going to be more persuasive than you, the person that they love the most, that they see as a human, than some stranger on fucking Fox News. So I encourage people to talk to their families. But if they can't support you and love you for who you are and what you believe, you can choose your family. And that's a really hard thing, but it's possible. So anyways, thank you for joining me today, listening to me ramble a little bit. But it's been a topic that I think a lot about, and I think that a lot of people have experienced. And it's the holidays, and family is a really important part of the holidays, but I want you to know that if you have trouble with a lot of this stuff, I hear you and I see you and I totally feel you. Have a good Wednesday. Bye, guys.